You know that feeling when you're headed up before that first drop is click, click, click. I felt like all of the tension that I'd been experiencing the last couple hours was just rising to this really epic level, just this, like I was going to explode or I was going to burst. Hey everybody, today is a really special day in my life and actually my wife's life. Today is our 25th birthday. And you're probably looking at the screen right now and you're probably saying, Josh, there's no way that you're 25 years old. Well, that's true. I'm 44 years old, but today is the day that I was actually born again. This is the day that I was saved. 25 years ago, February 28th, 1999, I had an encounter with Jesus that just forever changed my life. Some of you know my story, some of you don't. I'll share just a little bit of it. I'd been experiencing addiction for a number of years and been going to inpatient, outpatient treatment, all sorts of different things, Christian places, just all sorts of things to try to get off drugs. I was raised in a Christian home. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I just couldn't get free. I'd do the 90 meetings in 90 days. You know, the program works if you work it, and I'd stay sober a month or so and I'd go right back to it. Get in trouble at school, getting involved with dangerous people, dragging my wife, my girlfriend at that time, down with me. So just really living a broken life, all the things that come with drug addiction. And just for me, the selfishness and the self-centeredness around drug addiction was really controlling my life. My wife and I was 19 years old. We lived on the south side of Fort Wayne, across from Southtown Mall, which isn't even there anymore, on South Anthony Boulevard, in a little apartment in the Villa Capri Apartments, it was called. Kind of a rough part of the city. And we had been taking drugs for several days in a row. Magic mushrooms, that was a drug that we took that was not like the hard drugs that we were addicted to, not like cocaine or other things that we'd been taking. So we felt like, hey, this is going to be okay. It's natural, et cetera, et cetera. We've been taking acid and mushrooms and all that kind of stuff for years and smoking pot every day. It was just part of our lives. But we did become physically addicted to hard drugs as well. First rehab I went to, I was addicted to methamphetamines and eventually became very addicted to cocaine. So we're living on the south side. We've been taking these drugs for days and days. And we're going back to the guy's house to get more and just kind of keep this high going for days and holed up in this apartment. And we took these drugs. My one friend just goes to sleep. Those of you who've taken mushrooms know you don't go to sleep when you take mushrooms. You're awake for hours. Depending on what you take, it could be days. It just depends. So he goes to sleep. He sleeps the whole night. Nothing happens to him. So we kind of thought maybe we gotten ripped off. My wife, same thing. No, nothing happens to her. I take them. I'm not high, but I'm starting to have this feeling like there's something different. Something's going on. I started having these just terrible, really, really dark thoughts, destructive thoughts, not to hurt anybody else, but to hurt myself. Just really, really terrible thoughts. I know now, when you're tinkering with addiction, when you're tinkering particularly with drugs that take you outside of your consciousness and your mind and you're controlled, you're putting yourself in a spiritual world. And for me, I was in that spiritual world with no covering. I'm just wide open target to the enemy. And so these thoughts start coming to me, about harming myself. I know now that all of the uncleanness and all the things I'd been taking into my life for so many years as a drug addict, they were just really kind of coming to a culmination. They were taking control. I don't know what your persuasion is, but I believe that there's a heaven and I believe there's a hell. I believe there are angels of God, created by God, and I believe there are fallen angels. There are demons. There's a real devil that wants to harm us, wants to destroy us. And so the devil, and I believe demonic entities were attempting to destroy my life that night as I was having these thoughts. And so I'm having these thoughts. I start telling my girlfriend, my wife now, I think I'm going to go crazy. I think this is going to be a really good time, I thought the drugs were just going to kick in and it was going to be fun. But that's not what happened. I'm having these sensations. I end up in my bedroom and now I'm starting to feel sort of like a physical response to this uncleanness in my life, these demonic things. I started feeling like they were taking control of me. My body was tensing up and all my muscles just tight, kind of like a seething sort of feeling. As I'm sitting there in my bedroom just wondering, what's going on? What's going to happen here? I'd seen people lose their minds on drugs. Like I've seen people lose their mind. Thought maybe that's what's going to happen to me. I just wasn't sure, So as I'm sitting there, I hear this still small voice, not out loud, but in my heart and in my mind, I hear this still small voice that says, read your Bible. Right next to our bed, we had this card table, and the card table had our ashtrays and our papers and bongs and weed and all the stuff that first thing when we got up we'd get involved with. but I had a Bible there. I don't know why, but I grabbed this Bible off the card table. I opened it up, and like a snap of a finger, like a light switch, immediately I was under the influence of these drugs, and the words just kind of melted off the page. So now I'm in this emotional and physical turmoil, and these drugs have kicked in. So now I'm really confused. I'm really, really confused. So I'm sitting now in this room. I'm under the influence of these drugs. I'm feeling this spiritual, emotional, and physical tension just continuing to rise and rise. I can't hardly describe it. Then I have this thought in my mind. I hear this voice again, this still small voice that says to pray. And so I just start to pray. I just start to talk to God. And it wasn't a fancy prayer. It wasn't a King James prayer. I just began to cry out and say, God, I need your help. I need you. I need you to do something. I'm losing it here. And I hear the still small voice again, and the still small voice says to me, I will set you free tonight if you let me. That's what I heard. And so I'm sitting there and I hear this proposition, this question, this thing in my heart and in my mind, and I respond and I talk back to God and I said, Lord, I don't even know what you're saying. I don't understand any of this. I don't understand what I'm going through, but I need you. I need you to do something. I need you to set me free. You said you would, and so here I am. And I said, God, do whatever it takes. I don't know. Just, I need you to intervene in my life right now. And it was at that moment that I began to feel like I was going up a roller coaster. You know that feeling when you're headed up before that first drop is click, click, click. I felt like all of the tension that I'd been experiencing the last couple hours was just rising to this really epic level. Just this, like I was going to explode or I was going to burst, like this emotional pain, this physical tension. And as I got to the top of this precipice, we'll say, I opened my mouth and I screamed. And it was in that moment I knew that uncleanness, darkness was coming out of me. It had been inside of me. And I cried out. I felt like in that moment, I've described it this way many times in the last 25 years, I felt like in one moment, someone had called me on the phone and they'd said, everyone that you've ever known or loved or cared about, they were all on one 737 jet. They've all just crashed into the earth and they're all dead. All of them. I experienced in that moment at that precipice and that scream that came out of me, I experienced a crushing, breaking, humbling, it was like I was pulverized, like I was just crushed to the ground. I can't even describe it. My heart, my spirit, and my soul just were broken in that moment. Just crushed by the weight of God. So I open my mouth and I scream and this uncleanness comes out and I feel this breaking and this shredding and this tearing of my spirit and soul. And then I felt like someone had taken a jar of olive oil and just began to pour it on top of my head. And I could feel it. I could feel it just washing over my whole body, down to my feet. And as this oil was washing over my body, all of that tension and all of that pressure, all of that began to just wash away. And there was love and a warmth and freedom. I had a compulsion. I don't even know how to describe it. I felt like God was telling me that I needed to confess sin. Like I needed to tell someone things that I had done. So I called my dad at like 2 o'clock in the morning, wake him up, and I just began to confess sin. I just began to tell him, Dad, this is what I've done. This is what I've done. Awful things, terrible things. I get off the phone with my dad and I continue to have these experiences of this rising tension to a precipice and then this oil that would just wash over me over and over again. This happened for an hour or so. Eventually I fell asleep and I woke up the next morning and I can't even really describe it. Everything was different. I opened my eyes, what I was hearing, what I was seeing, the way that I felt, everything was brand new. Everything was new. It was like I was a different person. And I reached over, I jumped out of bed, I grabbed these mushrooms, I grabbed all weed, I smoked a pack of cigarettes for a day for years, flushed all that down the toilet, literally just dumped it out of the baggies into the toilet, flushed it down, and I never touched it again. I, in a moment, like a lightning bolt, like a switch of a light, my life was completely changed. I was set free. I tried everything to be sober. My girlfriend, my wife now, had the exact similar experience in the next room of our apartment. Today is her birthday as well. And so every year on February 28th, we celebrate and we remember how God set us free, how He changed our lives, how we were headed toward a path of destruction, towards imprisonment or death, separated from God. And we remember that He poured out grace and He poured out mercy and He completely set us free. I don't ever want to forget that day. I don't ever want to forget what the Lord has done for me. In these 25 years, I've had a lot of other struggles and difficulties and wrong paths and places that I've gone and things I've believed, ways that I've treated people that were not Christ-like. But I was set free from addiction that day, and I never looked back. All these years later, 25 years later, every year, the Lord is continuing to extend His grace and His mercy to me in new and different ways and fresh ways, and continuing to change me and make me into His image. Because I'm not there yet. I'm not a drug addict, and I'm grateful for that, but I have not arrived. I know that I'm headed toward eternity with Jesus. I will see Him face to face. I will see those that I have loved and lost, that have known Jesus. I will see them one day. Heaven is my home. And so I would just ask that this story, I hope, encourages you. I hope it lifts up your spirit. Revelation says that they overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. May my life, my story in some way be a way that you can overcome, because Jesus can do that work in your life. He can change you right now. He can change you, but you have to let Him. You have to choose. I want to encourage everyone, share this story if you think it would encourage someone that you know that might be struggling with addiction or anything else, or just needs to hear that Jesus does still set people free. I want to encourage you to do that and thank the Lord for His grace and mercy in your life today.